And I now recognize that everything that I've been doing has been leading to one question, and that is, what type of ancestor do you want to be? So that curiosity, that ability to understand that life is about experimentation, or a series of interconnected experiments and so that's where that curiosity came from. Last year, finally got my diagnosis of ADHD, borderline autism, and I already knew I was dyslexic. And so my way of navigating the world has always been one of passionate curiosity, because I experience everything intentionally through my senses and through this heightened state of awareness. I was just going to say, the reason I say the presence lab is because in order to be able to see patterns, you have to be present. And so many of the people who I know who are the most present are also neurodivergent, who also see patterns and connections in many things. And presence isn't just being able to sit down and meditate. It is the ability, it's a way of being that means that just naturally, for some of us intuitively, we see these connections, that we need to think in 7 generations, at least 7 generations, because we are thinking and acting too short term. My message to my younger self would be, you are enough. Just remember, you are enough.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taide, and today we are exploring the intersections of technology, ancestral wisdom, and the future of leadership. Our guest today is Adah Parris, a globally recognized regenerative futurist, and actually one of the most important ones according to Forbes, right, Adah? And she helps organizations navigate uncertainty by blending systematic pattern recognition, which is super interesting, cultural intelligence, and innovation. Hi, Adah. It's so amazing to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Hi, Maria. I am very well, thank you. Very honored to be here. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Me too. And, let's start by the beginning, right? Let's start with your journey. Can you share a bit about, how your path led you to become a regenerative futurist?
I will start by saying I didn't have what is known as a traditional path. So, my degree, I was studying pure and applied maths and educational studies. So looking at patterns, and fell into various jobs. So some very interesting, very random jobs, document storage, mechanical copyrights, went into advertising for a bit, went into education, learning, design. And really now I understand that this goes right back to being a child. So the fact that injustice would always make me cry, that my family and extended family always said that I was going to be a magistrate because I was always about fairness. Didn't have to be my experience. It was about what is fair, what is just, what is right. And those things have been the thread that have run through everything that I've done. And so working in advertising and education, learning, design was learning how to create systems of where people can be their best selves. My ancestry is that I was born in London, born and raised in London. I have a Nigerian Igbo father and a Guyanese South American mother. And as a child, I would kind of flip between both, trying to understand my relationship with those ancestries. And now, through the wonders of science and DNA, I now understand that my earliest ancestors are, they're still alive in me, so I'm saying Coptic Egyptian, Ashkenazi Jewish, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southern Asia, so all over the world. And I now recognize that everything that I've been doing has been leading to one question, and that is, what type of ancestor do you want to be?
I absolutely love this question. And, let's dig into that. But just one observation. I see that, somehow since you were a child, curiosity has always been there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This thing of not only being curious, but trying to make sense of things, and this connectiveness and but let's get to this question because it sounds so powerful, right? What type of ancestor do you want to be? It sounds so powerful. Why is that? Let's dig into that.
Well, I think it actually goes to some of what you just mentioned about the curiosity, because my mother is the eldest of 12, and she came over to the UK on her own when she was 19, and when she had me at 23, and she raised us to believe and understand that life is about experiences, it's not things. And so she created the space to nurture and to give space to our curiosity to grow and to thrive and to everything. So we had a house full of encyclopedias. Every Saturday we went to the library, we went to dance club, we went to the theatre, we went to forest. We did all of these things because she said, I want you to be able to make informed choices. And that has carried me through my life. So that curiosity, that ability to understand that life is about experimentation, or a series of interconnected experiments and so that's where that curiosity came from. And then weaving that with this understanding or curiosity about my ancestry. And now I understand that this is also part of my particular neurodivergences. So I am 54 this year. Last year, finally got my diagnosis of ADHD, borderline autism, and I already knew I was dyslexic. And so my way of navigating the world has always been one of passionate curiosity, because I experience everything intentionally through my senses and through this heightened state of awareness. So of course I'm going to ask, well, I say of course, for me it's always of course. Of course I'm going to ask, well, where do I come from and why, and what does that mean, and how does that change my relationship with land, with place, with time and space? So the fact that I now know that I have Italian ancestors meant that when I went back to Italy, I looked at that place as a land of my ancestors and started to navigate my own relationship with the physicality and the essence and the spirit and the history of the place.
You know the problem of talking to you is that I like
I saw your face.
so many questions. Like it's hard to organize my own thoughts right now, because I'm like,
welcome to my world.
it's like, I have to ask about this. I have to ask about this. I have to ask about it. And
This is why everything for me is a mind map.
Exactly.
I can't capture things in a linear way. My brain does not work that way. And so, in answer to your question, it is because I mind map everything.
I have a whole new podcast right now to ask you, because I'm in trouble. But wait, okay, let me try to organize that now. So,
Okay.
so first of all, okay, so one of the, I think that one of the reasons that I like so much this question, what type of ancestors you want to be, because it somehow is that when you talk about ancestry, like it's something, the idea that it passes me is something that you somehow carry on, like but when you ask, and usually we talk about ancestry, like we're looking back, right, like what we are carrying, but when you ask what type of ancestor you want to be, you're making us accountable.
Oh, completely.
Right? And that's, for me, it's something like it's so powerful because it moves us from a place of, that's something I've been carrying passively somehow, right? And then just making you accountable and making you like the main player, like a protagonist somehow, right?
Yeah. I mean, what it also does is it brings you very much into the present, because, as you said, many people think that ancestry is the things, the legacies that we continue that run through us. I spoke about my own genetic ancestry, or I'm going to be an ancestor in the future. And so in some way, negating your responsibility for the decisions that you make right now.
Yeah, what do I have to do today? What do I have to do? And as a futurist, right? It's something that like people have trouble thinking about the future and putting ourselves in there. And this question is just, it's like it's wrap up everything. It's what you're bringing and what you're doing today to
It's keeping us accountable. Well, My hope and my invitation is that it helps us to keep ourselves accountable and recognize that it's not I, it's we. And it's not how am I going to thrive or succeed, it's how are we going to thrive and succeed. And it also means that we need to be very different. We need to have different perspectives, different ways of being, different ways of seeing the world and understanding, because we're not a monoculture. Nature does not exist in a monoculture. And so those differences is what is vital for our survival. And so we have to take responsibility. Well, I am choosing, and my very strongly worded invitation to others is to find and to remember what your measures of success are, to remember that we would not have got through the pandemic if it wasn't for others who didn't look like us, didn't have our lived experiences. And so, interestingly, and I say it sometimes when people are a bit, oh, the motivation not to die suddenly meant that people go, oh no, I can get on with other people. Oh, I can share my phone number with my neighbors. I can do all of these things that were impossible because the motivation is bigger. And so by asking the question, I am recognizing something that many indigenous cultures have known for millennia and still maintain to this day, that we need to think in more than us. We need to think in 7 generations. We need to think about, by saying yes and by saying no, we are creating legacies. We are creating the ripple effect. So we can't negate that. As much as we try, we cannot negate that. We're seeing what's happening right now in the world. That, look, I was having this conversation. Now, this is an example. I was having this conversation the other day with a Mexican friend of mine, and I say that, and I bring her cultural identity into it specifically because we were talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity, and all of those things, and what's happening in America with he who shall not be named, and the ability, and the fact that his executive orders, on Monday he makes an executive order, on Tuesday people roll back all of their DEI policies. Now, to me, a bigger problem is the fact that you can roll them back so quickly, because it meant that they weren't real. If he can come along and say, nope, you've got to change everything, and suddenly you can strip out all this language, and you can strip out, and you can go, well, it doesn't exist anymore.
So easily, right?
It was never, so they were myths. They were fallacies. They weren't true. And so you get into this place of going, well, now we really see the emperor really truly has no clothes on.
Exactly. Oh my God. I listen, I want to be able to move further. It's like, forget all the rest. Forget all the... Okay, so there's so many things. No, first of all, and just how are we allowing all of that? But how on earth? But how are we just watching, like...
So when Trump was in the running the second time, I mean, the first time, I don't know what happened. The second time, people kept saying to me, well, how do you feel if he wins? I'm like, that's the wrong question. It's not if he wins, it's why is he being allowed to run? Now, to me, that shows me that is a sign of how broken the systems and structures were. And if people can truly see who he is, all the bad that he does, all the things, everything, I was going to use a word. Am I going to use it? Yes. If you look the beast in the eye and you recognize them for who they are, and you still feel that they are your only hope, then that tells me the system is broken. And so people are choosing, I choose to believe that there are also people who are choosing him because they feel that they have no other choice. And that's terrifying. That's the bit that is scary. It's that you cannot deny the things that he has done and the words that come out of his mouth. And, and so people, I recognize that fear is a powerful motivator. And we don't necessarily understand. And I'm not sure, sometimes I have this, I'm not sure I'm supposed to understand why they make those decisions, but I can have compassion for the fact that they feel helpless and that their lived experiences that are very different than mine have driven them to a position to make these decisions. Now, I definitely do not agree with them. And yet I can still have compassion, because if I lose my compassion for my fellow humans, I become like them. I become like the other.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And it's not easy. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy. I now understand why my mother used to count to 10. That, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because you're grounding yourself. And we have to protect ourselves. And sometimes that means removing ourselves from certain spaces.
Yeah. So there's something I want to go back. I didn't want to miss that because, and interesting, like talking about pattern recognition, right? It's been happening so frequently here in Future Hacker. So usually when we're choosing like who I'm going to talk to, like who I'm going to interview, I usually look for people, they have a different shape on their brain. Has to be, but on a positive way, that people that are really trying to make a difference and are trying, we're all trying, right? To have a more sustainable, inclusive future. So it's not just about technology, it's not just about science, it's really focused on, it's human-centered somehow, but planet-centered. I don't even like human-centered, because we're not doing
I was going to
good.
say,
We're not
I've
doing
moved
good
past
by doing
that.
right?
Which is why I moved from that's why I moved from sustainability to regeneration.
Yes, makes sense.
Because the sustainability bit is just it's sustain. The etymology of the word sustain is to maintain the same.
It's
and if we
regenerate.
maintain the same, that it's this human first.
Yeah.
We are the divine beings, and all of that. Then we're only going to get either more of the same or continue, or a decline that some people choose to ignore. If we say regeneration, then we are recognizing that we are part of interconnected systems and structures that we cannot separate ourselves from. And so the very fact that we can breathe means that we are connected.
Exactly.
And people go, oh, but I'm going to go out to nature. No, you don't need to. You're breathing. You are nature.
And one of the things that I've been hearing, and it's really astonishing me how frequently with the future hackers I've been talking to, is around this late diagnosis of neurodivergence. And I'm really getting every time I'm like, this must be a superpower. Like, this must be a superpower. And I'm wondering, and I always wonder because it's understandable that it's late diagnosed because we didn't have that in the past, so it's okay. But the point here is being the neurodivergent and knowing now, and how did it impact you? Like, did it make sense of things that didn't make sense before?
Oh, completely.
Can we cover that?
Yeah, it's so I thought that everybody saw the world and experienced the world in the same way that I do. So I can see somebody, if I'm watching a movie and I see somebody hit in the face, I feel it. I physically feel it. If I see somebody fall, my body lurches, not physically, but I feel that. There were many things that I just thought that's how people were. And I felt that I knew that I didn't understand the nuances of certain conversations. I thought that I was socially anxious. But I pushed. And thank you to my mother for making sure that, she supported us in everything. So she worked hard to make sure that we had tutors for school, and we did all things, and we went to the library and we had all these books, and it was difficult, but still I pushed through, with support. And so then when I got the diagnosis, and it was the reason that happened is because I had 2 therapists who said, oh, I could make referrals for neurodivergences. And I'm like, why are you telling me? And then, so as we started to talk and they started to explain, I went, oh, that sounds like me. So by the time, it took 4 years. So by the time I got the diagnoses, I was in a place of, I recognized myself. And then when the diagnosis finally came through, and I didn't really need the confirmation because I understood a bit more about myself, I went, oh, well, I can let that go, and I can let that go. I'm not going to worry about that anymore because I'm never going to get that. and maybe with a bit of support and a bit of focus or a bit of whatever, some meds or whatever and there are many solutions, or not solutions, there are many
Supporting, really, right?
supporting frameworks and things that you can do, that you can try, and that's a very personal journey. So I don't everybody has to do what's right for them, and you have to try it. And so it became a moment of liberation, and I think it's also about how I am anyhow. I'm very good at looking at myself and being reflective and going, well, I don't know, why did I get annoyed at that? Why did I get really pissed off at that person? Why did that really irritate me? And go, oh wait, what is that saying about me? Where in myself? So when I got them, I went, oh, well, I can let go of all that nonsense. And I have no regrets about my past, about things I struggled with, because in those struggles there were lessons. And maybe I look at it, maybe I was supposed to go through those things to learn those lessons, because sometimes you repeat them, but the gap between repeating them gets smaller and smaller and smaller. My hands go the wrong way. Smaller and smaller and smaller, until you suddenly go, oh wait, no, I recognize that. So is it a superpower? I don't necessarily see it as a superpower. I just recognize it, that there are some things that are difficult and they will always be difficult. And now I just tell people that, oh, I don't get that. I don't understand. My brain doesn't process that way. And some people find it quite, and go, well, was it somebody asked me, I was describing a piece of music that I really love, a soundtrack. And I was enthused about it. And they said, oh, who's the composer? I went, I don't know. I went, but you love it. Oh yeah, but I can tell you about the music. I don't know the composer. My brain doesn't work. Yeah. And so it's given me freedom. It's also helped me deal with my imposter syndrome, because I was trying to measure myself against what I perceived and society perceives to be normal, and I was never going to fit in those molds. So rather than do that, I'm now focused on, what are my measures of success? How do I want to show up in the world? And everything else, I'm like, well, I just be open.
And so how do you feel that this path of better recognition fits into that? Like, is it something, this ability? It's an ability, right?
Yeah, it's an ability that we have.
Not everybody, right? It's like you have to be very, very. What I feel is that you have to have this type of sensibility, not only sensibility, but this idea of putting completely things that seems to us that are unrelated and interconnect them and make sense of things. Can we cover a little bit of what it is, this better recognition and navigation? And
yeah, and so look, to me, it's what you said, that I'll speak for myself. You can usually see when it's happening, because when my face is very expressive, but you can see when I'm going, wait, and it's almost as though in the sky, I'm looking at that thought and that one and a little bit of that one and a little bit of this one, and wait, and then they're coming together. You know that scene in A Beautiful Mind where all the numbers and the patterns are swirling around?
Yes.
So it's a bit like that, where I don't necessarily, and I understand it now, I've always struggled with binaries and with boundaries. And so telling me that this is the boundary for this, I'm like, yeah, but why? Because I don't see that. So now the understanding of dyslexia, I'm like, but if we're dyslexic, then it means that we are seeing a holistic approach to language. And language isn't linear. So when you put language on a printed page, you're trying to turn something that's interconnected and complex onto a printed page. And we're seeing it as a concept. Well, I'm seeing it as a concept. I see it as art. So everything for me has become more of that. And I feel that many of us who are neurodivergent experience the world through multiple senses. I suppose the word that popped into my head is almost synesthesia. So our senses, we see many connections and things, and not necessarily say they don't go together. We just see, but we see more possibility than barriers. And then whether create language or ways of expressing that embody that. So it's difficult. I mean, one of the most difficult things I'm struggling with at the moment is to write a book. I've got a book deal. I'm trying to write this book. And the difficulty I have is, how do I express non-linear ideas in a linear medium?
Oh my God, I absolutely love that. How are you applying that, to the business world? Like you showed me this wonderful journey that I completely understand. You mentioned like it's like just a bird. It is like I could see that clearly, and the amount of energy and work that you put into that to turn into something that it makes sense to anyone that is going to see that. And so how are you able to translate all of that into to your clients, and how do you navigate that with someone else, right?
So thank you. So what you're talking about is the Presence Lab. It's my new, I say new, new.
And I love the
time.
name, the Presence Lab. It's wonderful.
Well, I was just going to say, the reason I say the Presence Lab is because in order to be able to see patterns, you have to be present. And so many of the people who I know who are the most present are also neurodivergent, who also see patterns and connections in many things. And presence isn't just being able to sit down and meditate. It is the ability, it's a way of being that means that just naturally, for some of us intuitively, we see these connections. And so I didn't understand that was what I was doing for most of my career. That I would use my ability to see connections and see patterns and find language to because I worked in so many different sectors and markets. I was able to translate that into a language that the people, my clients, would understand, whether it's advertising, marketing, what have you, whatever. And so that was what other people saw in me. And so earlier in my career, but you jump around, you're doing so many different things, but you've got this great energy and you have this ability to see things when I don't quite understand how, because you get to the answer so quickly. And so after my diagnosis, which was last year, I've done many things. I've been speaking on conference circuits for years and consulting and all sorts of things, and just doing this quite intuitively. And after the diagnosis and starting to write the book, I went through this whole thick period of suddenly going, and what was happening in the world, suddenly going, I don't know if I can show up in the world the same way I used to, because I was masking and trying to hold things together. And actually, who am I now that I understand how my brain operates? And I realized that I am really comfortable in complexity and in chaos and on the fringes, and there's liminal spaces where other people tend to be uncomfortable. And I'm really good at creating those safer spaces for people to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but to navigate through it together. It's always collaborative. And so whether it's been coaching or board advising or consulting or designing immersive experiences or all sorts of things, it's always been the same. So what I've essentially done now is I've productized my neurodivergence. Instead of just showing people the patterns that I see, I'm now helping people to understand their own innate abilities to recognize patterns. And so speaking with some of the people the CEOs and people I've worked with in the past, they said, what is some of the best ways of working with me? What are some of the best things? And I said, spending a dedicated hour working with you on a particular project or problem or what have you is better and gives us more clarity than, let's say, trying to do it as a 6-month program. And so all of those things I've just turned into this futurist on call, critical friend. So the way that it works is that you can either work with me for a month on a very specific project and you have 4 hours and you can choose. You have a calendar link and you can just book in when you need to use that time. Or if it's 3 months, then that's the leadership development piece. So helping leaders develop their skills to be able to help them become better ancestors and also trust their judgment. And then the 12-month piece is culture change and transformation. So all the things that I've done throughout my career, I'm now able to articulate them in a way that means I'm helping leaders and organizations to be proactive rather than reactive, especially in this complex global climate of geopolitics and all of the other nonsense.
Not a small task, right, Adah?
No, but I'm not doing it alone, which is why it's called a lab. It's called a lab because it's not me alone. So it's interesting. When I started to talk about the lab to other people and to other organizations, they said, could you put together a partnership proposal? Because you can do things that we can't. And so we want to make referrals. Also, organizations, groups, collectives like Future Hackers, and yourself, speaking to you, you're somebody that does this. So the bigger idea is that maybe the lab actually becomes a lab and a innovation arm and consultant, and it's not something I can do on my own.
It's all about co-creation. Like we can't innovate on our own. Imagine all the rest, right? It's all about it's our DNA. It makes completely sense. And now one of your statements that I also love is that you said, well, not statements, but you like provoking, right, Adah? So one was just a little bit,
but it gets people thinking.
Exactly. So So what if presence is our most advanced technology, and adding to that, right? It just feels that it's almost it's something that, amazingly enough, is being something hard to get, like people's attention, people presence, like their focus. And it's increasingly, the way that I think it's increasingly hard is because everything that is around us, like information, is getting too quick and too superficial. People are just they feel that they got enough from not enough, right? From it's too quick, too superficial. And my understanding is that your work requires people deep thinking somehow, right? And it seems to me that it's getting lost. People are getting impatient, they want things quick and easy and superficially. So what's your thought about that?
Yes, and so the reason that statement or that question, what if presence is our most advanced technology, first starts with what is technology? It's not digital. Technology are tools or things that we use to help us understand and navigate our relationship with ourselves, with others, and with our environment. Whether that's mobile phone or artificial intelligence or so this world of the cyborgs, or another side is the worlds of the shaman. So plant medicine or sound meditation. Same thing. I was brought up Catholic to understand and believe in a God who I cannot see that helps me understand myself, others, and my environment. Presence is the same thing. It's not a tool, it's a way of being that helps us to understand ourselves, others, and our environment. Quantum mechanics, I spoke to a quantum physicist. In quantum mechanics, it's emergence. The pattern is the same everywhere. And we keep trying to create these new and more advanced technologies when really they're not new, because we can look back to ancient civilizations, we can look in nature, and we can find exactly that. We can see the foundations of the same thing. And so I'm suggesting if we go right back, keep going back, way back to those ancestors, well, the most profound advanced technology was presence, was the ability to slow down, to not be on this hamster wheel. And so, yes, there are people who are caught up in the answers as a surface. I have to have it now. And I'm the chair of Mental Health First Aid England. We train people to be mental health and suicide first aiders. And people ask, are we in a mental health crisis? I think we are. And I think that we also are talking about it a lot more. So it's difficult to navigate the difference between, is it the more people or is it that we're talking about it more? However, as somebody who has burnt out 4 times, because obviously I didn't realize that 1, 2, and 3 were enough. I didn't understand what it actually meant and what the signs were. And so there are many people who want to step off the hamster wheel. And they ask, when I go to conferences and speak at events and things, many people say, tell me, how do I step off the hamster wheel? And I said, well, it's not going to be through digital technology. Going and doing a 15-minute meditation in your lunch break is not presence. That's not, it might give you a little hit, but all of this work that I'm doing now started from a place of recognizing patterns and saying, it looks like we're looking for new religions through the use of digital technology, things external to ourselves, to negate our responsibilities, to say that I'm doing it in the name of, or it's because of this, or this is the path that I'm following because of this guide, what have you. And I'm inviting people to remember that this also starts within. It also starts by holding our mirror up to ourselves and saying, the biases in AI are the biases in us. It's our most advanced, it's one of our greatest potentials right now, digital tech potentials, and it's also the worst, darkest side of ourselves that many don't want to admit to. And so before we can do any of those things and capitalize on any of those things, we have to start by slowing down and going inside. And there are people wanting to do that. Future Hackers, you are part of that. Organizations are made of people. They're not nameless, soulless entities, as much as people may feel. And what I'm doing is I'm connecting with those people who are asking those questions of, I want to do something different, but I don't know how. Where do I start?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Like it's a very specific target, and a very specific audience that they're already there. They just don't know how to do it, and then it's this type of help, right? Another concept that I would like to cover, and again, going back, right?
Going back.
We were talking about regenerative, right? Regenerative.
Yes.
And regenerative leadership. And I love the explanation that you gave. Why regenerative and not sustainable and not sustainability? So how do you apply this concept to leadership? Like, what is this regenerative leadership style?
A shortcut to, so I have been building frameworks and philosophies and all sorts of things for years and didn't realize it. And the latest version, and I can share something with you to share with your audience later, but the latest version of that really looks at nature and looks at the elements, ether, air, fire, water, earth. And that journey to get to that point has come from looking at my ancestry, looking at patterns in various spaces that, again, as you said, people think don't go together, and looking at those elements that are the basic foundations of everything that exists, and saying, well, if those are the foundations of everything that exists, why are they not also the foundations of leadership? So ether is also the negative space. It's also a pause. So slow down. Let's slow down before we make some decisions. So how can I create space, and how can I help you as a leader to slow down and pause and think and be proactive rather than reactive?
Now, the biggest question that I have when I hear that is so I understand that the people that are asking that is because they want that and they want to try and they need help. But how to be a regenerative leader within a system that not only does not reward, because because it's not everybody, especially people that are asking that, they're not looking for the type of rewards that are out there already. They understand that, but sometimes punish that, because that's not what they want to be delivered.
I choose to be careful about separating out who I am at work and who I am at home. I'm all of those things, and so I can be regenerative. I can start by being regenerative in my world outside of the work environment, because there are spaces and environments that, in the work environment, you can't do the things. They're not necessarily going to change, and you have to think about if you want to be regenerative and you want to be a particular way, does the values of the organization match yours? And I know that's a privileged conversation to have, because also people have responsibilities and you have to think about that. And so I start by saying, okay, so tell me about you outside of work. Tell me about who you are. What are the things that make you who you are? And where can we help? So me asking the question, what type of ancestor do you want to be, is not just about work. In the work environment, I give 1% of all of my revenues to 1% for the planet. Straight off the top of that, I will, when I run programs, then at least some of that goes to, working with Indigenous people and marginalized communities. In my personal life, it means that I'm making changes about where I buy my products, how I interact with people on a daily basis. So it's the holistic approach to all of that, and how I measure myself. So where I do my banking, who I do my insurance with. I'm trying to now move my website, my personal website, to a green hosting. I've just bought a new domain to do that. So trying to limit these things to just the work environment is always not always. What came to mind is I am a terrible skier. I am like a baby giraffe on skis, all arms and legs and everything. And the one thing that I remember is that in order to turn, you just turn, you do it. It's a slight, any change is a slight shift rather than this big change. So I help people start by remembering that they can do this everywhere. It's not only in the work environment. And then as you start to, so when I coach, I remember a lot of the questions I used to have, so a lot of the conversations I had when coaching people was around this idea of, but I always want to make my parents proud. And I said, but did your parents give you a very specific goal and said, when you achieve this, I'm going to be proud? Or are they proud of you when you demonstrate that you're proud of yourself? And the answer was always the second. And so if you want to be a regenerative leader, if you want to be these things, then you don't just only do it because it's the thing to do at work. Because when you start to demonstrate that in every aspect of yourself, so mental health, yesterday for Mental Health First Aid England, it was our My Whole Self Day. How do you encourage people to create spaces where you can bring your whole self to the work environment, or as much of yourself as you want to? Being a regenerative leader is also that. It's how you engage with people. It's the fact that I choose to make sure that everybody that I engage with knows that they are seen and heard, even if I disagree, I don't agree with them. Seeing people who are living on the streets, or, I don't like to use the word homeless, people who are displaced and living on the streets, I will always look them in the eye and acknowledge them, even if I don't have funds or cash or think sums to give them. That to me is, I'm trying to make every interaction better than when I left it. I'm trying to make sure that we recognize that being a leader is not just about getting a paycheck and winning awards for the business winning awards. It's also how you choose to carry yourself throughout life, because when you do, then that starts to rub off in your organization. You then become a role model. You then are able to have different conversations that people can see, because sometimes the reason why people don't want to change things is because they're afraid of the other. They don't know what it's going to be like. They don't think it's possible. And when you start to demonstrate that through naturally role modeling things, then it makes people curious. And so everything I do, every talk that I write always goes back to the same quote, and I mention it several times, but it is the one that I use. The purpose, regardless of the job titles I have, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon.
Exactly. Yes. Asking the right questions.
Yeah, just leaving people with enough space for them to ask themselves questions. So even if people don't like an interaction with me or they don't like something, it's evoked in emotion. And then you have a choice about trying to explore why that emotion has come up. What does that mean? What role did you play? How do we? And so it then creates something that you can't remove. So regenerative is in life. It's not just in the workplace, because then why are we only focusing there when everything that we do there also impacts everything else outside? So that's why the what type of ancestor do you want to be question. It's not what type of ancestor do you want to be at work. What type of ancestor do you want to be at work?
Exactly. Yeah, I was just wondering because when we use the term leadership, right? Leadership, there's a term that it's very specific to the business world, right?
Yeah, but this is the problem with language.
Yeah.
We confine it to certain boundaries and go, well, you can only talk. Like if you and I were to have a conversation about the word innovation, or your team was to have a conversation about the word innovation, many people would have very different views of what it is.
Yes.
And yet you would still have a conversation about innovation, assuming that everybody has the same perspective as you.
I have to comment that you used a couple of times the term boundaries and how they, and between you and I believe that most of the time those boundaries, those are things that don't make sense at all. You know, they just don't. Most of the time, I'm not saying all of the time, but I would say that most of the time. But talking about ancestral wisdom, and we're almost running out of time. So I still have three questions for you. So
Okay, I will try to be succinct. I'll try to be.
No, don't do that. Don't.
No, okay.
No.
All right. So then we'll have to do a part 2 and 3.
So
Okay.
listen, what's one piece of ancestral wisdom that you think should guide how we innovate today?
Ooh, great question.
I can see the cloud and the words out there over your head.
Well, I think I was thinking about, I was listening to the news before this conversation, and there was listening to PM question time in the UK, so Keir Starmer and the politics, and then listening to some news about Trump flip-flopping and what have you. And when you first asked the question, the phrase 7 generations came to mind. That we need to think in 7 generations, at least 7 generations, because we are thinking and acting too short term.
Yes, I just thought that when you commented, and as much as I love it, it's already so hard to think of today because it's so insane. And making us put out there 7 generations is a challenge, right?
I mean, there's the 7 generations. They all connect to presence. I think, yeah, if there's one word, it'll be present, because everything is connected to that. Love. I mean, I was having a debate with somebody the other day about love. I was saying, well, how can you be people who profess to love and still marginalize, are racist, are homophobic? That goes completely against the whole understanding and concept of love, right? Because love is boundless and eternal, and it didn't come with conditions, not as far as I knew. But yet you can say that I love and I'm in, you know, people say I'm love and I'm enlightened and all of this stuff, and yet they still choose to be homophobic or racist or misogynist or all of these things. I'm like, and that's the that's also part of the neurodivergent. I don't understand. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me. And now, instead of hiding those things, I just say it. I'm like, I don't understand. This idea of radical honesty, why does it need to be radical? Does that mean that you've been lying to me the whole time? What does that mean? Why can't we just be honest? Why do we have to preface things with, I'm going to be honest now? Because my brain goes, oh, what's the what? The whole time you've been lying. I'm like, I don't understand. Just say what you're going to say. And I now recognize and understand that this is how mine shows up. Because people say, oh, you don't look neurodivergent. I don't know what that means. Again, but not about and. It's that ability to question boundaries, the boundaries that don't necessarily make sense. Not all.
Okay, great.
I told you I was going to try and keep it succinct. What happened?
It will get harder. Wait.
Are you trying to catch me out? It's going to get harder.
Listen, with all this knowledge you've gained, all the patterns that you've been recognizing throughout your journey, if you could go back a couple of decades ago, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh yeah. Same. You are enough.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, never thought. Oh God, I suddenly felt like I'm going to cry.
Leave the last question to cry. It's a surprise one.
Many of us get told that we are too sensitive to this, to that, to this. And when you hear something enough times, you believe it. And then you doubt yourself and you don't trust yourself. Trusting other people is the latter part. The first bit is to trust yourself. And so my message to my younger self would be, you are enough. Just remember, you are enough.
You are enough. It's beautiful. So Leslie.
Okay.
It's going to be an insider's question. So people are not necessarily going to understand. Adah, what did you achieve? What did you achieve today?
You listen to some other talks, right?
No, I listened to you. I listened to you. You told me in your intro call, right?
Yeah.
Your mom would ask you every day. And I thought it was wonderful,
I forgot. Yes,
you
it was in the
told
call.
me.
But it is.
Yeah.
Okay, what have I achieved today? So, I am writing the manuscript, and I'm writing the chapter. I'm writing this chapter. I've decided to write it as a letter to current and future ancestors. And it's about recognizing that we have to accept that there is also space for chaos and complexity, and we shouldn't try to simplify those things. And so today I hit flow.
Really?
Where just a beautiful
that's wonderful.
flow where I've been struggling for a while. And then today I suddenly hit this flow space where I went, and then I went, so my friend Gustavo, who talks about time and temporality, I need to speak to him because I want to quote him in this piece. And my friend who does this, I want to quote them. And this author who I really respect. So it just meant I hit flow, and then I also started to remember and identify who are some of the othered voices that I want to quote within that piece. And I reached out to them because I want to quote them now, not where they were when they wrote something else.
That's wonderful. And it was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. If would like to give any final message to the listeners, feel free. I love, leaving the final words to our guests. But it was just wonderful having you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I really enjoy those conversations where we end up laughing and throwing our head back and laughing with our full selves, not just your eyes, full body, throwing your head back and laughing. So all they get to see is your neck. Love that. My message to you is an invitation. Reach out to me. Let's talk. Let's look at how can we collaborate. Let's look at partnership. The Presence Lab isn't just me. I've just given a name to it. Let me know what you're doing. How can we support each other? Because we need to be supportive. It's not that we are in competition. We are collaborative. That's what we need.
Everybody, let's co-create the future together. Come on, let's move. Let's move. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do today, right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of us.
Yes. Thanks, Adah. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.